3, 2, 1.
So we're going to discuss today when victimhood counts as the fallout from Parkland continues, plus Stormy Daniels befuddles the White House, and Paul Ryan, is he on his way out? I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. Oh man, so many things to get to today, and we will get to all of them. First, I want to say thank you, however, to our sponsors over at Boll & Branch. So, you've not been getting enough sleep, and you think that you've not been getting enough sleep because you're stressed or because you're not exercising, but one of the reasons you're not getting enough sleep is because your sheets stink. Okay, you know they do. You just stopped at the side of a road, and there's some weird guy who was selling 1,000 thread count sheets, and you picked them up, and you've been sleeping on a plastic tarp ever since. Well, Boll & Branch can fix that for you. Okay, Boll & Branch makes the best bedding and the best blankets made from pure 100% organic cotton, which means they start out super soft, they get even softer over time, and you can buy directly from them, so you're essentially paying wholesale prices. Luxury sheets can cost up to $1,000 in the store. Boll & Branch sheets are only a couple of $100, and that's well worth it since you're sleeping on them every night. Everyone who tries Boll & Branch sheets loves them. In fact, we threw out all of our other sheets and bought only Boll & Branch after we started working with them. That's why they have thousands of 5-star reviews. It's why Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, Fast Company, they're all talking about Boll & Branch. Even 3 U.S. presidents and Bill Clinton's ex-lovers sleep on Boll & Branch sheets. Shipping is free. You can try them for 30 nights. If you don't love them, send them back for a refund. But you're not going to want to send them back. They really are that good. To get you started, right now, my listeners get $50 off your first set of sheets at bullandbranch.com, promo code Ben. That's bullandbranch.com, promo code Ben for $50 off your first set of sheets. Again, all of their sheets are just phenomenal, and their other products are as well. You sleep much better in your own bed when you have a great pair of sheets. That's what Boll & Branch does for you. BOLL and branch.com. Use that promo code Ben to get $50 off and let them know that we sent you. All right, so we've been hearing for weeks that those of us who are in favor of Second Amendment rights are somehow weird, crazy, right? Because we're all worried that they're going to take our guns. And what you'll hear from people on the left is, no, we don't want to take your guns. No, we're not interested in taking your guns. Why would we want to take your guns under any... No. And then, of course, they argue that they want to take our guns. The latest example of this comes courtesy of former Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens. So John Paul Stevens was appointed by Republicans, and then he proceeded to govern left of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That is not a joke. If you actually look, people have charted how particular justices govern and rule from the bench. John Paul Stevens was one of the most liberal members of the court for nearly his entire tenure. He was one of the worst picks. I believe he was appointed by President Reagan, one of the worst picks of President Reagan. And he has just been disastrous. In fact, I'm going to check that real fact that he was appointed by, he might have been appointed by Nixon. He was appointed by President Nixon. Gerald Ford. He was appointed by Gerald Ford, but he was one of Gerald Ford's worst moves. And now he has an op-ed in the New York Times literally titled Repeal the Second Amendment, which makes the second op-ed in the New York Times in the last 2 years calling for full repeal of the Second Amendment after Bret Stephens wrote the same thing, and Bret is their in-house conservative over there. So John Paul Stevens writes this full op-ed about why we should get rid of the Second Amendment entirely. First of all, completely unrealistic. In order to pass a constitutional amendment, you require 2/3 approval of each House of Congress plus 3/4 of all state legislatures. Look at a map. It's all red. Okay, there are 30-some governors in the United States who are Republican. 0 state legislatures are actually going to pass this thing outside of California, Massachusetts, New York, and maybe, Minnesota or something. Okay, the notion that a bunch of people are sitting around waiting to repeal the Second Amendment is just not accurate. But let's go through John Paul Stevens' awful argument in the New York Times for why the Second Amendment should be repealed. So he begins by praising the marches and rallies that have been taking place since the Parkland shooting. He writes this: "Rarely in my lifetime have I seen the type of civic engagement school children and their supporters demonstrated in Washington and other major cities throughout the country this past Saturday. These demonstrations demand our respect. They revealed the broad public support for legislation to minimize the risk of mass killings of school children and others in our society." So number one, this is stupid. This is incredibly stupid. If you really believe that big rallies mean that there's tremendous support for hardcore anti-gun legislation, then you've never seen a rally before. And first of all, this rally wasn't that big. There were like 200,000 people who showed up in D.C. Sizable rally? Sure. Okay, in 2000, there was the Million Mom March, also for gun control, also anti-NRA, and 750,000 people showed up in Washington, D.C. At that point, I believe Bill Clinton was still president, technically, and nothing happened. Right? 0 things happened. There's been seriously, pretty much 0 gun legislation between 2000 and 2018, despite multiple major rallies on gun control. And it's worth noting that when Tea Partiers were out there by the hundreds of thousands, nobody seemed to care about that either. Every year, the March for Life happens. It's several 100,000 people, and pro-life legislation does not inevitably follow, nor would people on the left suggest, wow, look at the public support for that. That means we suddenly have to get rid of abortion rights. So this is really dumb. And then he continues. He says, the marches are a sign that it's time to seriously curb weapons ownership. Quote, that support is a clear sign to lawmakers to enact legislation prohibiting civilian ownership of semi-automatic weapons, increasing the minimum age to buy a gun from 18 to 21, and establishing more comprehensive background checks on all purchasers of firearms. But the demonstrators should seek more effective and more lasting reform. They should demand a repeal of the Second Amendment. So it's not enough to pass a law that would bar civilian ownership of semi-automatic weapons, which is to say virtually every weapon in the United States. Again, for those who don't know anything about guns, a semi-automatic weapon just means you pull the trigger once and one bullet fires and another one is loaded into the chamber. That is all a semi-automatic weapon is. That's the only thing that distinguishes between a revolver and a semi-automatic weapon is that there is a changing cylinder in a revolver that doesn't exist in a semi-automatic weapon. Virtually every weapon in the United States, unless it is bullet loading, muzzle loading, or a revolver, is a semi-automatic weapon. Virtually all of them. And there are 300 million of them in the United States. So he says, well, no problem. Just get rid of semi-automatic weapons. Everything will be fine. Yeah, good luck with that one. Okay, but then he says that he wants the Second Amendment gone. So it's not enough to just get rid. And then I love this, that the left keeps saying that we're just idly worried about Second Amendment rights being violated. We're not. We can have common sense gun regulations. Yeah, at least Stevens is being honest. At least he's being honest. So he says, let's get rid of the Second Amendment entirely. He says, quote, concern that a national standing army might pose a threat to the security of the separate states led to the adoption of that amendment, which provides that, quote, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Today, that concern is a relic of the 18th century. Well, no, it isn't. Okay, the concern that the federal government would invade our rights in a really egregious manner and that we might need guns to protect ourselves. I'm wondering how that's a relic of the 18th century when we have had, beyond the 18th century, full-on slavery in the United States, Jim Crow, removal of gun rights from black folks, removal of gun rights from a wide variety of people, including Japanese Americans during World War II, and the forcible imprisonment of Japanese during World War II. It seems to me that an armed population is a better guarantee than sitting around thinking that the government will never go tyrannical. It just is. That's not to suggest that every armed rebellion is good or that it will end well, or that armed rebellions are largely successful. But one of the reasons that the government doesn't go full tyrannical is because they know that there are 100 million people in the United States who own guns. Try telling a bunch of Texans they're not violating their rights when you say you want to go into their basement and take out all of their guns. Again, good luck with that. This concern is, you know how historically ignorant you have to be to believe that it's a relic of the 18th century to worry about centralized government taking your guns and then invading your rights? Okay, it's happened in virtually every tyrannical country. It's happened in China. It has happened in the Soviet Union. It's happened in Nazi Germany. This sort of stuff happens all the time, routinely, a lot. And so then he continues, he says, for over 200 years after the adoption of the Second Amendment, it was uniformly understood as not placing any limit on either federal or state authority to enact gun control legislation. In 1939, the Supreme Court unanimously held that Congress could prohibit the possession of a sawed-off shotgun because that weapon had no reasonable relation to the preservation or efficiency of a quote-unquote well-regulated militia. Well, that's not even a real reading of the case. That's a bad reading of the case. If the idea here is that you have to be a member of the militia in order to carry a gun, that is absolutely untrue. It is not true at the time of the founding. It is not true throughout American history. It's not even true in the case that Stevens is citing. Stevens was a bad Supreme Court justice, and he is an ignoramus when it comes to actual jurisprudence. Okay, the case he's citing is United States versus Miller in 1939. Justice Scalia explained this case to Stevens in his opinion in Heller versus D.C. He said, quote, Miller did not hold that and cannot be possibly read to have held that. Quote, the judgment in the case upheld against a Second Amendment challenge two men's federal convictions for transporting an unregistered short-barreled shotgun in interstate commerce in violation of the National Firearms Act. It is entirely clear that the court's basis for saying the Second Amendment did not apply was not that the defendants were bearing arms not for military purposes. Rather, it was the type of weapon at issue was not eligible for the Second Amendment protection. This holding is not only consistent with, but positively suggests that the Second Amendment confers an individual right to keep and bear arms, though only arms that have some reasonable relationship to the preservation or efficiency of a well-regulated militia. Had the court believed that the Second Amendment protects only those serving in the militia, it would have been odd to examine the character of the weapon rather than simply note that the two crooks were not militiamen. Furthermore, this has been understood for literally hundreds of years. One of the reasons in the Dred Scott decision, the evil, horrible Dred Scott decision, in which the Supreme Court decided that black people in America could not be full citizens of the United States, okay, Justice Taney wrote in that decision that one of the reasons black people could not be citizens of the United States is that if you made them citizens of the United States, then they'd be able to carry guns. The obvious underlying assumption being that citizens of the United States have the ability to carry guns, that they have the right to carry guns under the Constitution of the United States. Right, here's what Justice Taney wrote in that evil Dred Scott decision, quote, it would give to persons of the Negro race who are recognized as citizens in any one state of the Union the right to enter every other state whenever they please. It would give them full liberty of speech in public and in private upon all subjects upon which citizens might speak, to hold public meetings upon political affairs, and to keep and carry arms wherever they went. And this scared Justice Taney. This is why he said that we wouldn't allow black people to be citizens and that they had to remain sort of property. In this evil decision, he said, because if you were to make them citizens, then there are rights that comes along with being a citizen. One of those rights is carrying firearms. But Stevens isn't done. Then he quotes Chief Justice Warren Burger, who's the man responsible for such constitutional abominations as Roe versus Wade. And he says that Chief Warren Burger used to say that the NRA was stupid. Well, who cares what Chief Warren Burger had to say? That guy was a terrible justice. Warren Burger was such a bad justice that Potter Stewart, another justice on the Supreme Court, leaked dramatically to Woodward and Bernstein. I think it was Carl Woodward. Was it Bernstein or Woodward? It was to one of them in their book, The Brethren. Okay, The Brethren is a book about the inside workings of the Supreme Court. Potter Stewart hated Warren Burger so much that he leaked the entire book, okay, to Woodward and Bernstein about why Warren Burger was an idiot. Everybody on the court thought Warren Burger was an idiot, except for John Paul Stevens, apparently. Okay, so in any case, he then rips into District of Columbia versus Heller. That's D.C. versus Heller, the 2008 case that re-enshrined the American right to keep and bear arms. And here is what Stevens concludes. He says, that decision, which I remain convinced was wrong and certainly was debatable, has provided the NRA with a propaganda weapon of immense power. Well, actually, they had a Second Amendment before that. Overturning that decision via a constitutional amendment to get rid of the Second Amendment would be simple. It would do more to weaken the NRA's ability to stymie legislative debate and block constructive gun control legislation than any other available option. Okay, so it would be easy to get rid of the Second Amendment. Go ahead and try. Leftists, please do it. Make this your rallying cry. Please tell Republicans all over the country they're going to take away their weapons and repeal the Second Amendment. Do it. I dare you. You want to see yourselves get killed in November? Politically speaking? You want to see just get destroyed politically speaking? Do this. Push for a giant gun control effort. Okay, in just a second, I'm going to talk about another idiotic rant on gun control. But first, I want to say thanks to our sponsors over at the USCCA. Okay, as you may have noticed, your gun rights are, in fact, under attack. The folks on the left are interested in taking away your gun rights, and that's why we are working very hard to ensure that people who have guns know what to do with them, not just for resistance to government, but also because as a law-abiding gun owner, you have a right to keep and bear arms. Now, you are running out of time to claim your free mass shooting survival guide and audiobook. If you're listening right now, you know we live in dangerous times, but enough is enough. When it comes to protecting the people you love, you deserve to know the truth. You're about to miss your free copy of the complete mass shooting survival guide from the USCCA. Go to defendmyfamilynow.com while you still can. It's defendmyfamilynow.com. It's 100% free. In this book, you will learn what we really need to know about mass shootings, how to survive an attack, proven strategies for stopping a shooter, and a whole lot more. Again, while the left fulminates about guns generally, make sure that you know how to protect yourself. That's what this guide is for. Plus, you can claim your copy in seconds. It's 100% free. And if you act now, you also get a bonus security checklist to print off for your local school, church, or office. Don't miss this life-saving guide and audiobook. Your 100% free copies will be gone next week. Go to defendmyfamilynow.com to claim yours while they last. Again, it's defendmyfamilynow.com. Defendmyfamilynow.com. Ensure that you and your family are protected in case of, God forbid, a mass shooting. Make sure that you know what to do. This is why the USCCA is helping you out in a way the leftists aren't. Okay, the folks on the left are saying, give up your gun and we'll keep you safe. The USCCA is saying, keep yourself safe and know how to do it. Get your free copy of the complete mass shooting survival guide from the USCCA. Defendmyfamilynow.com. That's defendmyfamilynow.com. Okay, that wasn't the only dumb notion that was being pushed by the left today from John Paul Stevens. There's also a tweet storm from Michael Ian Black, who's a comedian. And that means that he must know lots about guns, right? Because he's a comedian. So that means that he knows a lot about guns. So here's his tweet storm. He says, quote, I'll say it. Assault weapons aren't the problem. Handguns are the problem. By all means, ban AR-15s and the like, but handguns kill far more people. The solution is to repeal and replace the Second Amendment. Make gun ownership a privilege, not a right. Okay, at least they're being honest now. At least Michael Ian Black and John Paul Stevens, they're being honest now. And they will be increasingly honest as time goes on. I'm old enough to remember when the Democrats claimed they weren't for nationalized health care. And now, of course, this has become a thing they like to do, is nationalized health care. And Michael Ian Black continues along these lines. He says, 38,000 Americans died from gun violence last year. What number would you like to compromise to? 20,000? Well, no, I'd like that number to be zero. But let's recognize that 38,000 Americans didn't die of gun violence. 2/3 of those died of suicide. And among the others were a various number of criminals. And then he continues along these lines as well. Cutlery doesn't cause obesities, but guns do cause gun deaths. Well, that's idiotic. Guns do not cause gun deaths. That's like saying guns cause death. No, the person who pulls the trigger caused death. The person who uses the cutlery is what makes them fat. So actually, this is just dumb. And the stupidity continues. It's a long rant. Yes, having the ready ability to take someone's life as dominion over that person, gun ownership could be viewed as slavery by another name. So me owning a gun and protecting myself is slavery. So I'm glad to know that Michael Ian Black is a complete historical ignoramus. As you may have heard just a few moments ago, the Dred Scott decision was fearful that black people would have guns. In fact, gun control legislation in the South was specifically designed for literally 100 years to prevent black people from being able to protect themselves. Listen to Condoleezza Rice talk about her dad having a gun and how he helped protect her family with that gun. If you really believe that gun ownership is slavery, you have no knowledge of history, contemporary politics, or gun ownership. I mean, this is just inane. It's just inane. Gun ownership viewed as slavery. I'll tell you what's slavery. What slavery is me giving up my gun to a government that says it will protect me, and then they let me die in a hail of bullets when a criminal just decides not to obey the law. But he's not done yet. Michael Ian Black continues, how's it working out for people of color now? So somebody points out to him that black people have not been able to get guns historically, and that's been bad for them. He says, how's it working out for people of color now? Well, considering that black people are largely shooting black people and white people are largely shooting white people, it's hard to imagine that people of color want their gun rights removed. Law-abiding people of color want their gun rights removed. That's a weird argument. So again, all these arguments are sort of weird. And then he finally continues and he says, yes, evidence supports the fact that easy access to guns increases suicide attempts and successful suicides. In fact, the evidence is mixed on that. The Japanese suicide rate has remained intensely high despite the fact there are very few guns in the country. Again, none of this has any relationship to reality, but doesn't matter. Folks on the left are firmly convinced it's time to get rid of the Second Amendment, and we thank them for their honesty, because now we can have a real debate, a real conversation. It's all I asked for from Piers Morgan years ago. Just tell me the truth about what you want, and then, guess what? Guess what? We can have a conversation, and we can decide whether Americans are really ready to surrender their right to self-defense and the right to keep and bear arms to a government that fails to protect them on a regular basis. Okay, so meanwhile, a lot of hubbub has broken out about quote-unquote attacks on the students of Parkland. No one's attacking the students of Parkland. We're attacking their arguments. They have a right to speak out. We all feel terrible for them. Obviously, witnesses to a shooting have gone through something traumatic and horrible. It does not make them experts on gun control. We're all making the same argument here. And it's amazing to see which survivors of gun violence are actually put in the media and how the media plays this stuff up. So I do love this. Morning Joe did another one of their ubiquitous montages. This montage had to do with the March for Our Lives on Saturday, and they played Joe Scarborough's protest song over it. So here's what that montage sounded like.
Once in your life,
and they're showing all of these marches about Vietnam, and now they're showing this montage of Iraq,
against a column of tanks.
and there's a Tiananmen Square. They showed this yesterday, okay, the march against poverty, and now there it is, the March for Our Lives. Okay, so they basically just recut this montage in order to include the March for Our Lives. Okay, then the real reason for this, of course, the real reason that they decided to show this montage is so they can push Joe Scarborough's crappy song. I do love that the only way that Joe Scarborough can sell his song is to do montages on Morning Joe where they play his song. Like, nobody's buying the song, apparently. So it's like if every time I played something sad on the show, I played myself playing Schindler's List. Joe Scarborough has to play. It's just amazing. Every time there's a protest now, he's going to find like 3 guys standing outside of McDonald's protesting for a raise, and suddenly Joe Scarborough is going to show up with his guitar and start playing. It's going to be amazing. I love it. I love it. It's so self-serving and so self-aggrandizing. It's incredible. Okay, but speaking of the students who must never, ever be, their arguments must never be attacked, again, it's amazing which victims we choose to focus on. So the Eagles of Death Metal frontman went after the students. He said that these Parkland students are acting inappropriately. He is, of course, exactly right. And here is what he had to say. He unleashed a torrent of criticism. So he put up a bunch of posts. And in some of the posts, he said that some of the student marchers were, quote unquote, pathetic and disgusting for playing hooky at the expense of 16 of your classmates' blood. And then he shared this image of Emma Gonzalez ripping up the U.S. Constitution. Now, what's funny about that is, I don't know if you've seen this going around, but there is an image, it's a GIF, that's been photoshopped of Emma Gonzalez tearing up a copy of the U.S. Constitution. Anybody who watches it knows that this is obviously a GIF that is meant to be symbolic, that Emma Gonzalez doesn't like the U.S. Constitution and therefore she's ripping it up. If you believe that GIF was real or that picture was real, then you're an idiot. But the media is playing it like the entire right believes that picture is real. That, of course, is not true. Anyway, he says, quote, as the survivor of a mass shooting, I can tell you from firsthand experience that all of you protesting and taking days off from school insult the memories of those who were killed and abuse and insult me and every other lover of liberty by your every action. May every one of these disgusting, vile abusers of the dead live as long as possible so they can have the maximum amount of time to endure their shame and be cursed. Okay, so pretty harsh language. I wouldn't use it, but Does he have unquestioned moral authority, Jesse Hughes? He was the band leader of Eagles of Death Metal, who was, of course, at the Bataclan when that place was shot up, right? It was his concert that was attacked. Does he have unquestioned moral authority? Is he allowed to question other survivors? Or is it only certain survivors that we give unquestioned moral authorities? And then I do like this. He tweeted out a graphic that says, pills that are hard to swallow. Our guns aren't going anywhere. There are only two genders, and Donald Trump will be your president for 7 more years. Yeah, it's a little bit funny, I will admit. Yeah, and again, are we allowed to question the arguments of students? Because some of the arguments are really dumb. So here's one Parkland student who is saying that, who's on with Brian Stelter, and inadvertently saying something really true and really profound about the state of journalism in our country.
I think that, for me, the purpose of journalism is to raise, the voices of people that maybe don't have a voice. And so I think that in its own right, journalism is a form of activism.
So a lot of people on the left were saying, we're trying to distance themselves from this comment that journalism is a form of activism. It is pretty obvious in the wake of these shootings that journalism is indeed a form of activism. I've been saying this for a very long time. It's why I call myself an opinion journalist. I'm honest about it. Folks at CNN are not honest about it. And they claim that they are objective news journalists. In reality, they do have an agenda. They are pushing that agenda. They are pushing that agenda day in and day out. No wonder the student journalist believes that journalism is activism. She watches CNN. Of course she believes journalism is activism. If I watch CNN on a regular basis, I'd believe that too. Okay, journalism for CNN is indeed activism. This is how journalists see themselves. In fact, I remember I visited the ABC News offices with the God King of the Daily Wire, Jeremy Boring, and one of the things he said on the wall was something to the effect of, we give voice to the voiceless. And I just thought to myself, that's not journalism. Journalism isn't about giving voice to the voiceless. It's about objectively covering facts. But people in the journalistic business believe that it is their job to actually push a particular political agenda. They believe that they are do-gooders in the world, not just people covering the news and informing folks. This girl has obviously imbibed from that, and she's just spitting back what she's heard from the media. Unfortunately, she told the truth a little bit too honestly right there for the media to handle. Okay, so in just a second, we'll get to Stormy Daniels' fallout. We'll get to Paul Ryan and all the rest. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at Genucell. So you've been wishing that those bags under your eyes would just go away, or your wife, she's been wishing that. Well, this is why Genucell is there. Genucell is a serum with plant stem cell technology from Chamonix. My wife uses it. My mom uses it. My mom steals the materials from my wife in order to use it. Okay, it is just fantastic. Susan from New Jersey says, I've been using Genucell for a couple of months. The puffiness around my eyes is gone. The crow's feet, the small lines, they've disappeared and they have not come back. Again, my wife uses it. She loves it. My mom uses it. She loves it. My sisters are getting it. There's a reason that Genucell is so popular, and that's because it works. With its instant effects, you will see results actually in the first 12 hours or your money back. I guarantee it. More importantly, so do the folks over at Chamonix. So order now. Get that Genucell Collagen Builder and Deep Firming Serum. 2 bestsellers also free. You can look younger. You can look better. Call 800-663-2904. 800-663-2904 or visit Genucell.com. That's Genucel.com. Genucell.com. 800-663-2904. If you call right now, express shipping is also free. It's 800-663-2904. And again, Genucell.com. That's Genucell.com. They've been advertising with me since my days in Seattle, and my wife has continued to use their product even since my days in Seattle. It's been years now, which is why my wife is young and beautiful and smoking hot and also a doctor. So Genucell.com. Check it out, 800-663-2904. Try it for yourself. They really are great. Okay, so meanwhile, the Stormy Daniels controversy continues. Now, let's be real about this. The real reason that people care about Stormy Daniels is it gives them an excuse to Google Stormy Daniels lesbian activity on Google Images. Okay, let's be real about this. If Stormy Daniels were not a porn star, nobody would care about this. Because if we're going to pretend that people are deeply worried about the corruption of the Trump administration, there are 1,000 other stories that seem to go deeper on the quote-unquote corruption stuff than the Stormy Daniels thing. Now, is it sort of a clean bust that Michael Cohen paid her $130,000 to shut her yap when it came to the election time? Yeah, that's bad. Is it campaign finance reform violation? Not sure. I mean, John Edwards paid $900,000 to a woman to keep her yap shut after he fathered a child with her, right, while he was married to his cancer-ridden wife. So that is not, I'm not sure that this violates campaign finance law. What's funny is that Trump's approval ratings continue to go up. So yesterday there was a big stock market bounce. The stock market yesterday jumped something like 680 points or 700 points. It was the third biggest stock market gain in one day in the history of the stock market, actually. That is, that's not super surprising because there was such a big stock market adjustment yesterday. The stock market is up again today. So, it's up and down, it's up and down. I think part of that is because all of the tariff talk that's happening from the Trump administration is starting to soften just a little bit. So the talk before was that Trump was going to slap these tariffs on products and leave them there forever. And now the talk is that he's going to slap the tariffs on long enough to negotiate a better deal. if the latter is true, then all right, I guess that's okay. If the latter is not true, then the stock market will go back down again. But in any case, people who are wondering why Trump's approval rating is going up, beyond obviously the economics of all of this, one of the reasons that the approval ratings are going up is because when you talk about a rich dude stripping porn stars, most people are like, well, yep. Remember, Donald Trump was elected after building an entire apartment decorated by Saddam Hussein's decorator. Donald Trump is not exactly genteel about his wealth. And it's funny, when growing up, my grandparents, my mom's parents, were relatively wealthy. I wouldn't say that they were like hugely, enormously successful, but they owned their own home, they had their own business. But one of the things that I always appreciated about my grandparents is they never showed off their wealth. They always drove a normal car. They were not people who were garish in their spendthrift ways. There are a lot of folks who get rich and then they decide that they're going to demonstrate to the entire world just how wealthy they are. But the best people are the people who you meet and you don't know that they're wealthy. Well, Donald Trump is not one of those people, right? Donald Trump got famous for being the really gauche guy on Lifestyles on the Rich and Famous. That was essentially his profile for a very long time. And there are a lot of folks in the United States who want to be Donald Trump. Let's be frank about this. There's an aspirational side to Donald Trump that appeals to the worst of our sensibilities, where people who are poor look at Donald Trump and they think, if I were rich, you know how many porn stars I would nail? A lot, man. I would really go for it. Okay, so Donald Trump stripping a porn star, not a shock. Again, I'm not sure why we're supposed to be surprised. Melania Trump posed naked with other women during the time that Trump was dating her and went on Howard Stern and talked openly about their sex life together. Like, Melania now is pretty classy, but back in the day when Trump met her, not so much. I mean, I believe he was still married to wife number 2 when he started going with Melania. And when he was dating wife number 2, he was still married to wife number 1. In fact, there's a famous story. I'm not sure whether it's apocryphal or not. I'm fairly certain it is not. But the story is supposedly that when Donald Trump was married to Ivana, right, who is Ivanka's mom, that Donald Trump was dating wife number 2, right, who was Marla Mapes. And Marla Mapes was at the same resort where Donald was keeping one wife, right? So he's keeping wife number 1 on one floor and he was keeping his mistress on another floor. And Ivana discovered that Trump was, in fact, stooping soon-to-be wife number 2 on a different floor of the hotel. She found out about it while he was on the ski slopes, and she went up to the top of the ski slopes with him. He tried to ski away from her, and she was yelling at him the entire way down the hill while skiing backwards because Ivana is actually an expert skier. So, and again, the weird idea that Donald Trump is some sort of prophetic, godlike, wonderful Christian figure on sexual morality is absurd. In fact, one of the reasons he's popular is because Donald Trump is the guy who unapologetically stoops porn stars. So when he's in the news for stooping porn stars, and most guys are Googling to figure out how Stormy Daniels looks naked, he's not going to lose approval ratings from dudes on that score. And most women are going to look at Stormy Daniels and go, like, are we supposed to believe she's a victim? This is a woman who has sex for money. Like, this is her entire career is to have sex for money on camera. And she herself has said she's not a victim. She herself has said that she is not a Me Too person, that she fully consented to sex with Trump. And so we're thinking to ourselves, a lot of Americans are thinking to ourselves, I'm not sure what the big deal is here. Now, again, is it immoral? Yes. Is Donald Trump an immoral guy with women? Yes. Should he be paying off women to keep silent? No. Is any of this surprising? No. None of this is surprising. The only thing that is mildly surprising is the White House keeps denying the underlying claims. So here's the White House yesterday being asked about Stormy Daniels, and Raj Shah from the briefing room being asked about Stormy Daniels and not coming up with a fantastic answer.
Could you state categorically that the president, his campaign, and the Trump organization did not violate federal law, specifically election law, regarding that payment?
Well, I can speak for only the White House, and I can say categorically that obviously White House didn't engage in any wrongdoing. The campaign or Mr. Cohen, the campaign or Mr. Cohen can address anything with respect to their actions. With respect to that interview, I will say the president strongly, clearly, and has consistently denied these underlying claims, and the only person who's been inconsistent is the one making the claims.
Well, I mean, to be fair, do you believe that Stormy Daniels had sex with Trump? Because I do. Some of the inconsistency from Stormy Daniels is fully driven by her career, right? She took the money when she felt like that was the money she could get to shut up, and then she decided to speak up when she feels like there's more money in it to speak up. Stormy Daniels is no heroine here. Stormy Daniels is a woman who had an affair with a married man, fully knowing that he was married, and did so for career reasons. And then she went quiet when it was time for her to get paid by the Trump campaign, basically, by Michael Cohen. And then she decided to not shut up anymore when it became obvious that she could make a lot more money by not shutting up anymore. So Stormy Daniels is not a victim here. That doesn't mean that Trump is a saint. We have this tendency in American politics to say that there can't be two villains in the same story. That if Stormy Daniels is terrible, then Trump is wonderful. And if Trump is terrible, then Stormy Daniels is wonderful. How about they're both scuzz? Okay, just in terms of personal morality and sexual morality, they are both just gross. And Stormy Daniels' lawyer is showing that on a pretty regular basis. Again, Stormy Daniels is doing like stripping tours now. Okay, like right now, in the middle of this, she's going around, basically making the pitch, you can see what Donald Trump saw. Well, gentlemen, again, Google is available. You don't have to pay Stormy Daniels your money to see what Donald Trump saw. She's widely available on the internet. In any case, Stormy Daniels' lawyer was teasing the idea that maybe there's pictures of Donald Trump naked, which would just be the worst of all possible scenarios, right? I mean, no one wants to see that. Stormy Daniels has said she didn't even want to see that. At least Stormy Daniels thought she had a shot on Celebrity Apprentice. If we have to see pictures of Donald Trump in the nude, oh, it's just going to be so terrible. Now, I don't actually believe, by the way, that Stormy Daniels has pictures of Trump in the nude. I think that is very, very unlikely. This happened in 2006. Camera phones in 2006 were garbage. You still had flip phones in 2006. Okay, we can only hope the pixelation was really bad at that point. But if it's true, oh, no. Just no. Just no.
He's been a polygraph expert for 3 decades. No galvanic skin response, no blood pressure. The questions were all wrong. Do you know
the person who administered this lie detector?
I have no idea.
So you don't know anything about the record of this person?
$25,000.
Knows nothing about it.
He paid $25,000. I know. Right. I looked at a picture. By the way, thank you for supplying that picture.
Well,
that
that's not the last one. That's not the last picture.
Oh yeah. Where is it?
Buckle up.
Where is it? Where's the CD? I should buckle up.
Buckle up.
Believe me, I have nothing to buckle up.
Buckle up. You'll need a big one. But
oh yeah.
All right, now.
Okay, so here he says that maybe we have pictures. Okay, so we'll find out whether he is bluffing or not. And then he had some other things to say, but to hear all of the other things that Stormy Daniels' lawyer is saying about the star of the Witches of Brestwick, that is an actual movie that Stormy Daniels is in, you'll have to go over to dailywire.com and subscribe. So for $9.99 a month, you get a subscription to dailywire.com. When you do, you get the rest of this show live, the rest of Knowles' show live, the rest of Klavan's show live. You get all of those various glories. Plus, you get to be part of our mailbag, get to ask live questions. And when you get the annual subscription for $99 a year, you get this, the very finest in all beverage vessels, leftist tears, hot or cold tumbler. It is just magnificent. Okay, you get all of that with the annual subscription. Plus, I will make an appeal to you. Okay, the fact is that one of the things that helps our company run is your subscription dollars. And if you can subscribe, you're helping out our company. I get a lot of emails from folks asking how they can help out with our mission of helping to inform more people, keep people up on the news, promote conservative values. Subscribe. Honestly, it's a really good way to help support us and ensure that all of the otherwise unemployable waifs that populate our office still get to eat at night and don't huddle in the cold, hungry, under the overpasses in Los Angeles. So you can help make that happen. Consider it an act of charity. Go over to dailywire.com right now and subscribe. Or just want to listen later, go over to iTunes, go over to SoundCloud, go over to YouTube. Please subscribe. Please leave us a review. We are the largest, fastest growing conservative podcast in the nation.